update on the immigration battle between Sheriff Redmond? Obviously, it was being argued in court yesterday.
Yeah.
Any new developments over the past 24 hours? Or?
Well, I'll tell you, it's just, it doesn't have to be this. You know, you mentioned the term battle, and there really shouldn't be a battle. You know, we sent multiple communications to the sheriff saying get in compliance with Indiana law, and they've been basically ignored. I think one was answered, others were not, you know. And here we are at a cost to local taxpayers. The law is simple. Help and cooperate with your federal law enforcement partners. This is the first case in the state under the new statute that I'm enforcing. So either way that the decision, this preliminary decision, right, it's not a decision on the merits, but either way this preliminary decision goes, this statute is an important one, and I'll continue to enforce it here in the county and around the state. So it's not the end of the story by any measure.
The cost to the taxpayer, do you have an exact rough estimate dollar amount of what it's costing?
No, not necessarily. It's just the idea that the sheriff now has to hire attorneys where he didn't have to before. We think we had much better arguments in court than these attorneys did. They still certainly have to get paid, and it's the local taxpayer that's going to be doing it.
Sure. Redmond's team argued in court that you essentially don't have the authority to dictate a county sheriff. Do you or don't you? I mean,
yeah, no, it's an absurd argument. Now, they raised something about the 10th Amendment. If a plain reading of your Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights where the 10th Amendment is found, will show you that the 10th Amendment was meant to constrain Congress against the states and individual and otherwise there's no constraint against the state. And of course I have standing. I'm the chief legal officer of the state of Indiana. My client is the state of Indiana. One of the things that the state has are statutes put into place by elected representatives of the people. So of course I should be in court defending the state statutes as I do every day across the state and in Washington, D.C.
So if Redmond loses, essentially what would the punishment be?
Well, this is a motion to dismiss, so it's preliminary. So if this motion is lost by the county, which it should be, with all respect, then the case will proceed on the merits, and we'll go ahead and prove what the sheriff, for unknown reasons, continues to deny, and that is, look, here, a letter from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement showing how the sheriff has not complied with their detainer requests. Now, what's a detainer request? Well, it's when the sheriff picks up an illegal alien and the federal government says, we want that illegal alien for, could be a number of reasons, but it's mostly for deportation, which, by the way, would save the county, okay, a bunch of money if the county didn't have to prosecute them for the underlying crime that they were picked up for. They can just call up ICE. ICE takes them and deports them, and that would be a very efficient way to handle the situation. Yet this sheriff, here in writing, not by Todd Rokita, but by U.S. immigration enforcement officials, is shown not to comply, not to honor those detainers, and therefore he's harboring, he's allowing a sanctuary county here.
So essentially what would happen if Redmond wins or prevails in the case?
Well, on the motion to dismiss, we'll continue on. We'll appeal it. I'm sure we'll have to read what it says, right? Of course, but it's not. My point is, it's not the end. It's a good statute. It's a statute that's needed. We have millions of people who shouldn't be here, okay? And you can think that that's unfair, and all people they're trying to be here, they're trying to work, they're trying to be nice. Well, first of all, they were picked up by the county sheriff for other issues, so you know there's problems. But two, think about the taxpayer. Think about your viewers who have to pay for hospitals, who have to pay for schools that are now overrun, who have to pay for extra police because of the fentanyl overdoses and increased crime that's going on from the millions of people that came here, and the first act of coming here was to break the law. And that's who President Trump and I want gone.
Any other comments about
nope.
the case? While you're here, I want to ask you about a couple other things that are kind of important
yep.
to our area. Obviously, Notre Dame, the DEI. What's the status update of that? I know they had until June 9th, essentially to respond. Have you gotten a response from Notre Dame?
We did, and so they've engaged, they have responded, we're reviewing that response, and the investigation is ongoing. There is no secret around what I'm looking for. We simply went to the website, and there are other publicly made comments and resources, and have questions about how they achieve their diversity goals. Perhaps there's some reasonable explanation, but when you say you want certain goals met, and you now have interpreted law in this country that says you can't achieve those goals if you do them at the expense of someone else. If you have to discriminate against someone of color, of a particular color or not, to reach that goal, then you are against the law. So that's what we're trying to explore here. And we're not, and like I said in the letter, we're not trying to say that they're guilty of anything yet. We simply have questions. They've made an initial response. We'll see if that's their only response. But I appreciate the cooperation, and the investigation is ongoing.
Sure. Was it like a specific complaint that your office received, or how did you come to the conclusion that they may be
publicly available information? It was nothing. There's no whistleblower that seems to be involved here or anything like that. We did get complaints, but it's just how we followed up was looking at just what was on their website, and maybe some speeches that were made or some things like that. So it's no gotcha here from my perspective. It is the idea of making sure that no one in this state is discriminated against.
Sure. Are you looking at any other universities or colleges
Yes.
in northern Indiana?
In northern Indiana, well, that remains to be seen. We'll see. Stay tuned on that one. But we do have similar inquiries into Butler University in Indianapolis and DePauw University in Greencastle.
The response that Notre Dame gave you, was it in person? Did you have a face-to-face meeting?
It's written.
Written.
Yeah.
Was it different? I would assume it's much more lengthy than the statement that they released. Right?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with their statement, but it was a detailed. I don't know if detailed is the right word. It was a long response.
Mm-hmm. And the laws that they could specifically be violating, was that Senate Bill 289 that Ron just signed? Or?
Well, it more has to deal with the Supreme Court's ruling in the Harvard case, where the Supreme Court ruled on admission policies of Harvard University. So this follows on that. And that case can also be used for hiring decisions. So whether you're admitting a student into a school, or whether you're hiring a person in a school or company or what have you, that the standard applies that you can't hire someone at the expense of discriminating on the race of someone else. That's also an applicant. That's basically, in a nutshell, what it's about. And given what Notre Dame has made public on their website and other things, I have questions.
Do you yourself have a deadline in mind of by when you want to respond to their response?
Oh yeah, thanks. It's a priority for our office, and because we understand the flagship nature of this university, and I understand as a Catholic the good it brings, and certainly the good it brings to Indiana. So it's not an issue of trying to persecute. It is an issue of making sure that people are protected, even if the motive is good, even if the motive is benign or intended to be benign. You could still be engaged in discriminatory practices, which is illegal, whether you're Catholic or not.
Sure. What are some of the, repercussions that you can inflict on them?
So to answer your question, then, so the timeline is, I have no set timeline, and the way we do our investigations, we kind of go where the facts take us, and however long the facts take us. So it is a priority, but we're not making any shortcuts or any summary conclusions. Sure. But go ahead with your next one. Yeah.
What are some of the repercussions that you could inflict on Notre Dame if you do come to the conclusion that they are going to violate this law?
Well, that's kind of step 49. And we're not there yet. We're not that far along. But the bottom line is that I also enforce Indiana's nonprofit laws here in the state of Indiana. Notre Dame is a nonprofit, And so, but again, I don't think we have to be there. And that's far off. We're still in initial phases. They might have perfect answers for all my questions, and this thing goes away immediately.
Do you or don't you have the authority to strip their nonprofit status?
Well, a court of law, I think, ultimately would, but I would be the one enforcing that in court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
No, thanks. I appreciate it.
Just a couple more topics real quick here. I want to talk about Deerfield Estates, the mobile home park community that had deplorable conditions here in LaPorte County.
Well, it's just disgusting, and unfortunately, we deal with too many of these kind of cases. We can't take every one, but I think you covered the last time we were up here when township government had an issue. And so now we're up here for Deerfield. And what we're finding is just deplorable. These are the kind of landlords that if you're a minute late on the rent, they're all over you. But the minute a tenant who's paid, especially, has yellow water, who has to bathe with bottled water, and ask for relief from their landlord, these people are nowhere to be found. So we're going to litigate them. We're going to litigate their position, and we'll fight them all the way we have to the ends of the earth if we have to, ultimately to get this problem corrected and to hopefully seek some restitution from the landlord. But again, step 49 in what's going to be a long process.
Do you know when or what the update is on the lawsuit currently?
It's if this was a baseball game, we're still in the early innings, right? That's the best I can say. I'm not sensing a great deal of cooperation or a strong willingness to settle this yet. And by settle, I mean resolve it. I mean get these people to living conditions and get them to a condition that represents the rent that they pay.
Have you been able to get a response from the owner, Nelson Communities? We reached out to them. We didn't get a response when we did the story. I was just curious if you just mentioned hesitation on cooperation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sensing much eagerness to settle this. Where they're talking to with my staff, I can't tell you right now. Right. Yeah.
Any other problematic multi-unit properties in our area that might be on your radar?
Not at the top of my head, but we are overflowing. We can't possibly explore all the complaints that we get. I can put it to you that way. And now with the state budget cuts, that included my agency, who knows where all this goes.
Sure. Any other further comments?
Well, I just want to tell your viewers, if you're experiencing problems with your landlord, first of all, make sure you paid your rent. I'm interested in helping people that paid their rent and aren't getting what they, in a pattern fashion, not just one-off situations, but on whole aren't getting what they paid for. And when I say paid for, it's either they paid for it themselves or the taxpayers paid for it.
Sure. Last question. This is about the Supreme Court Disciplinary Commission. The court agreed that you violated professional conduct rules concerning the statements that you made on Fox News. You also agreed to not contest the finding, but in the press release hours after that, it seemed to have went back on that. The question is, are you willing to abide by the agreement that you made with the Supreme Court, and if not, what message does that send about the rule of law?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. First of all, we settled that matter. And I said at the time, the timing of my remarks, could have been better. And as a human, I can always do better. We can all do better. And so now they want to relitigate and resentence all that. Some politically driven members, of this commission who are listening to grievance, who are politically motivated. The guy who's filed this particular grievance literally got Democratic Activist of the Year award from the Indiana Democratic Party. So I think your viewers have to recognize that this is a very politically driven process, is being weaponized, and others are even part of it or being duped by it. I stand by my words. I was honest with the court when I agreed to settle the matter for them. I'm honest with the court in the statements afterwards. The timing of my remarks could have been better. What I said was absolutely true. And I've always spoken truthfully to your viewers, to the people of this state, and certainly to every court I appeared before. So if they want to litigate that matter, we're going to do that. But in the meantime, I will continue speaking honestly and truthfully to the people of this state, even if some politically motivated people don't like what I say.
Any certain person or organization that might be kind of spearheading
There's national memos out there. This is happening in several other states as well. They found out a reason. So look, I'm blessed and humbled to have the largest number of votes ever given a statewide candidate in the state of Indiana's history. The people of this state have given me a tremendous amount of trust, and I've earned that trust, and I will continue to work for that trust. You have politically driven people who don't like what I say, don't like what I stand for, and don't want to respect the vote of millions of Hoosiers. And so they're going to try to use 9 people who meet in secret. You can't get in the meeting, I can't get in the meeting, okay? Talk about lack of transparency. To take away something that millions of Hoosiers want. That's a weaponization. That's called lawfare. And it's going on across this country, and I'm going to fight against it.
Thanks for watching. Here's another story you may like, and subscribe to the WSBT 22 YouTube channel.